times got flipped around and so forth. And it ended up, my wife and I had this long plan to go to Mexico right from California. And literally, we closed the deal on the plane before it took off, flying to Mexico. I actually, while we were sitting on the plane on the runway, ready to go out, I casually asked the flight attendant and pilot if I could step out for a second and just get this deal closed.
Yeah.
Normally, they wouldn't let me do that. I told them it was an emergency. I really needed to take care of something. We did. And I didn't delay the flight, by the way.
Yeah.
But I think it's so important. I mean, I think CEOs should have people that they can bounce things off of. You don't necessarily have to be an entrepreneur, but someone that's leading people should have someone that they can talk to.
Welcome back. This is episode number 6 already. And wanted to talk about something really, really cool that happened that I want you to share. Last week's episode, we talked about private equity and angel investing and VCs and things like that, and how to approach people for investments and so forth. But at the same time, knowing the different things that you kind of should go in there and prepare yourself with and so forth. And since that time, since last week's episode, there's been a pretty significant thing that has happened in your life with your 5th now deal that has gone through and completed. And I think it would be, great to be able to share kind of how that started, being that it is your 5th one. Obviously, this is not your first rodeo with all this stuff, but love to hear a little bit more about that and kind of how it started. And, when the investors came in, originally interested in acquiring the company, kind of that, progression of, what happened. Because it was fairly quick. It happened within a few years from the time that it started.
Right.
But it was based off of kind of another exit that you were also a part of, that this kind of was a little bit connected in a way, if I'm right. So exactly. I'd love to hear a little bit more, about that whole process.
Sure. Happy to. It's, I guess, living the American dream in building something that not only is important, a social purpose, but also creates value. And people look at that and go, how can you have two things? How can you create something that has such a great social purpose, but also has created value? A lot of people think, okay, you need to be a nonprofit in order to be a social purpose company. And as a social purpose entrepreneur, and that's where I feel I've coined myself, was building that. And the company, I think we kind of hinted through these last 5 episodes about a deal forthcoming, and how really we thought that, whenever these things happen, you never know whether they're going to go to completion.
Right.
And it did. And it's a great story too. It was really only a 3-year startup, kind of derived from the last company that I sold in the behavioral health space. And remember, I got into the behavioral health business because of a tragedy. I had a brother who committed suicide and so forth. So it this whole process of building this company and then eventually selling it, kind of bittersweet. The sweet part is, of course, building a business that that creates value and that you can hand off. And hopefully, the goal always is, when you build something like that, is that you're giving it into hands of people that can take it to the next level.
Right.
We got it. Me and my 2 partners got it to a level. We brought in some great people to help run the business, and really was fortunate enough to make a decision and get an offer to sell it. So going through that. The story is kind of interesting because I think I told you, Craig, I was on the West Coast last week,
right,
or 2 weeks ago when we did the our last episode,
mm-hmm.
and just it was funny. We were closed. Decided the closing was going to happen. Times got flipped around and so forth, and it ended up my wife and I had this long plan to go to Mexico right from California. And literally, we closed the deal on the plane before it took off, flying to Mexico. I actually, while we were sitting on the plane on the runway, ready to go out, I casually asked the flight attendant and pilot if I could step out for a second and just get this deal closed.
Yeah.
Normally, they wouldn't let me do that. I told them it was an emergency. I really needed to take care of something. We did. And I didn't delay the flight, by the way.
Yeah, that's good.
We got off. But yeah, it was just like all five of the past. It's bittersweet. You know, my first one at about 38 years old that I saw was a very little, a small transaction. That was bittersweet. And then as they started getting bigger and bigger and bigger, NHA, which was the company I mentioned to you that I saw when I was 46. That was the biggest one I've ever been involved in. And then after that, three more, you know. So three others rather. And it's a very bittersweet scenario that you go through. It's a bittersweet feeling. Really, really enjoy my employees. Really, really enjoyed what we're doing, what we're accomplishing. We were literally saving lives. I don't know if I got into too much detail what Thrive was, but it was about mental health for K-12 kids in school districts, mostly in the Northeast. And it really became a labor of love.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, being 60 years old and not wanting to stop, for sure, but wanting to seek other avenues and do other things, I thought it was a great idea. And my two partners, probably more than I did, wanted to end on a high note. And so we made the decision and we took it and it worked. And, you know, I'm wishing it luck. I wish my employees luck. I think we have some wonderful people, and we're going to have a nice dinner coming up soon and get together with everyone. And it really is every single time this happens. It's not one of these things where you just go, wahoo. Believe me, I went to Mexico. We did not celebrate. I mean, I celebrated being in Mexico and laying on the beach and enjoying, but I didn't, I'm not that kind of person. I don't need a ticker tape parade for my accomplishments. I always think to myself, like, you know what, you're geared up for more. Let's get serious. And I do. I really feel that being 60 does not end it for me. Being 60 for me is that I'm going to continue to get better, better and better. So,
was there a time, you know, during any of the exits, where you had said, okay, I think I'm good. I think, you know, I'm going to kind of relax and enjoy it. Or was it kind of just, I'm in this and I enjoy the journey too much and I just want to continue doing it. And that's kind of still what you're looking to do. Like you said, you're not done, 60 years old, and you're not done, still interested in pursuing, maybe not at a CEO type of role, or how would that work? What's that kind of look like to you?
Yeah, well, to take a step back, so one of the biggest exit I had was when you were working with me. That was almost 15 years ago, 14 and change, right? Mm-hmm. That one was interesting. I was 46 at the time. So being 46, I'll never forget, people came up to me and said, well, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? And so forth. And my wife was like, take some time off, relax. And I felt so much pressure to want to do something else. And it took me a little while to get myself back started again. I remember, we laugh now at the time where I was growing like this thick beard and not showering and like working from home. And my wife said to me, if you ask me one more time what's for lunch today, I'm going to lose it. So it became a mission to get out of the house after about 3 months. She was great about it, but it really was that one was probably the toughest. It was the one that changed my trajectory of my life, but it was the toughest. It was the baby that, every single inch of, I was the first employee in that company and, and sold it with whatever, 40, 50 employees when we sold. And it was, that was really, I would even take the sweet part out of it. It was bitter. The private equity group that acquired the company made changes, didn't keep everybody in their positions. That was a tough one. I took that personal. I think you remember that. I took that personal, and but yeah, I wanted to get back, and it took some time. That was probably the biggest delay. I mean, this last one, from selling Sage, which was the company we sold in 2020, which was a behavioral health company, and literally like 3 years to the day, selling the startup of what we sold, we started Thrive, and literally 36 months later, sold that company.
Right.
So didn't take me a lot of time. There was an idea of what I wanted to do next when we sold Sage. So yeah, I mean, I don't know what the next, what the future holds, what I'm going to be really working on, but I feel real comfortable that I want to help people. I want to stay that social purpose entrepreneur. I want to give back. As I have, I want to even be better at giving back. I really want to support younger entrepreneurs and support people that want to get there. I'm still involved. I'm still a partner in a in a venture capital firm that I actually started. Although that's not a day to day. We do have a managing partner that runs that day to day. So I'm involved more, a few hours a week. But talking with those entrepreneurs, that takes up time as well.
Right.
So, but yes, I think there's definitely another hidden path that I'm going to go down again.
Yeah.
It's like, boom, you finally get out of the hidden path, you figure your way out, and then all of a sudden it's like, holy shit, there's another hidden path.
Right.
Am I going to go down there again? You're going down again at 60?
Yeah.
But I feel good. And again, being 60 means a lot of things. So many things to many people. Sometimes, depending on how you are health-wise,
sure,
and so forth. Certain people, it may be, hey, it's time to pack it in and start, enjoying my elderly years. I don't feel that way. My wife doesn't feel that way. So I feel like I got a lot more in me. I'm going to learn from my wisdom, learn from my experiences, learn from everybody else's experiences. I mean, I wanted to do this podcast for a number of reasons. Part of it's to learn from your experiences. So it means a lot to different people, but 60 to me kind of feels like, hey, let's keep going.
Yeah. I mean, well, there's, I can't think of off the top of my head, some of those entrepreneurs that started businesses later in life, but I know, Colonel Sanders, KFC,
Yeah.
That was later in life. For him, there's a lot of people that started things in their 40s, 50s, and 60s and so forth.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
McDonald's.
So, one of the things that you just said, kind of interesting is that, you had Sage that originally sold in 2020, and now this exit 3 years later, 36 months later.
Literally. Yeah.
Do you feel that in a way, because this is your fifth exit? I don't think there's a lot of people that can say that they've done one successfully, let alone five. Do you think also in a situation like that, and this is kind of thinking a little bit about the previous episode, when investors are looking into acquisitions or acquiring companies and all that kind of stuff, do they also look at the fact that, okay, well, this is an entrepreneur that's been involved in other exits before, and that kind of gives them a little bit of, validity that, hey, okay, this is somebody that's good to deal with. They've built something strong. Do you think that plays into it in a situation where you've had, this experience as being the fifth one, or does that not really play into? Because I would think of it the same way as in your fund. Do you look at that like, hey, okay, this is somebody that's been involved in an exit before, and are they involved in something cool now?
Yeah, I guess you can look at it in a couple. I was just talking to someone the other day, and it's like lightning, right? Striking. Right? Like this. Would you bet on the guy that? Would you bet on the guy that lightning got struck by lightning that he's going to get struck again? Yeah. What are the odds of that? Right.
Right.
I say that in a funny way because there are some investors that look at that and go, you know what? I don't think it's going to happen again for this guy.
Yeah.
Talking to an M&A friend of mine out in California recently, when I was out there, he's like, this literally normally is, when we're dealing with an entrepreneur selling their business, it's really a life event. So to have 5 of these life events going on is pretty interesting.
Sure.
I'm not saying I'm unique. I'm not better than anyone else. Maybe I got a pretty good formula going here. I that I want to share with people, but so as far as I'm concerned as an investor, I look for people. Yes, of course, somebody had a really good exit and they're on another one. They've learned from their mistakes. I think that's probably the most important thing. They don't always have to be successful. I've invested in people that have failed 3 times. Because remember, I failed 3 times. We can have that conversation too, right? I failed 3 businesses prior to 5 successes. Mm. So I've been in 8 businesses, right? So I got to, I've failed probably more than a lot of people have ever failed in business, right? Usually after the first one, they're done.
Yeah.
I got back up and did it again. Got my car repossessed. Couldn't pay my apartment rent. All those things. So, So I can easily be talking about my failures as well as my successes. Be a pretty boring show if I just talked about my failures, though. So I don't think we would go that far with anyone listening to this podcast.
Right.
But I learned so damn much from those failures. And forget about the failures. I've learned so many failures that I've done in my successful companies, wrong moves, wrong directions, things that I've had to step back up. There's probably in that 15 years running NHA, I probably made, 200 mistakes and maybe 10 really good decisions. And that's what made that company successful. So, looking at an investor, and I am getting back to your point. I'm not drifting off, but going back to that is, so for me, it's about what have you overcome? Not as much what have you succeeded. That's nice to know. But what have you overcome and what won't you do again? Because if you again, I reiterate this, but I have to say it. If you continually do the same thing over and over again, that becomes a problem. I caught that in myself. There were times during those 3 failures that I was repeating some of these things. They may have looked differently. They may have had different shapes to them. May have been different types of decisions, but to me, it was the same mistake. And a lot of that was not getting the right people on board. And I felt like I can get through without getting the right people on board, and you can't.
Right.
So those were things that I did make a few mistakes over again, but after a very short period of time, that never happened again for me.
Now, those things, those mistakes that you kind of saw that you were aware of, and like you said, different, nuanced a little bit or different shapes, like you said, are those things that you noticed just from the experience and kind of said, okay, this is a very similar path that I've been on before that I don't want to finish. But the other part of that question is it because of your experience and because of the wisdom that you've learned during the process of the past, 30 years that maybe, other, startups or maybe that are looking for investments or looking to, to have a buyout or whatever it might be, or an acquisition, are those some of the things that might not be as easy to notice, for them, that this is a mistake? And can you see that from the outside looking in sometimes more than maybe the entrepreneur is from the inside looking out?
Yeah, for sure. Even this last deal was really one of the first, well, except for maybe the first transaction I ever did, which, I didn't make a lot of money from and so forth, the first of the five. But for this particular deal, I took on the role of the M&A. We didn't bring in an M&A advisory group for this deal. I said to my partners, I'll run it. I'll run this process. It wasn't to save dollars or anything else. I just felt really engaged, and I felt like I could negotiate this thing better without that. Certain deals, I wouldn't do that, but this one, I particularly had a good feel for, and it all came down to exactly what we wanted. What with the dollar figure all matched, everything matched. The deal went smooth. From those were things I learned. I actually learned that from some of the mistakes that we did make with in the M&A group in the last deal. That just prolonged the deal. It ended up working out fine, but it prolonged the deal. And I felt like sometimes too many people involved cause a lot of commotion.
Right. Too many cooks in the kitchen type of thing. And And do you think that people with different experience levels in that aspect, some of the people involved, this might have been their first or second, acquisition. So they're not as seasoned, I guess you can say. So did you feel that, being that this was the fifth one and you acting, on behalf of the company as the M&A, is that just because you went through it? Was there, like you said, there was something about this one that you kind of just felt, not necessarily comfortable, but there was something there that you're like, I can do this myself. But were there, with your partners or any of the other, employees, where they're kind of like, hey, like, are you sure that this is a good move? And you're like, hey, listen, this,
Yeah, I think with this one, it was the rapport I had with the buyers. And I think they appreciated the fact that I hung in there and I was the go-to guy.
Right.
And I felt it made it easier for them not to so it was more importantly made them feel more comfortable with the deal. There were sometimes when you're dealing, and believe me, I think M&A people are great. And I don't think I would do any other deal but this one without them. But I felt like I said, too many cooks in the kitchen. I think it was too much communication that would go around, the old telephone thing. You said this, you said this, you said this. So keeping things organized. It's really funny and my wife and my daughter laughed about it because I'm not the most organized guy in the world. But for this particular deal, I was really organized. I even surprised myself. But I did it because I knew what I wanted the outcome to be. I knew that my rapport with the buyers were really on. We were solid. Things came together. It took, all these deals always take longer than they do. By the way, that's the same way as raising money too. If you think you're going to raise money in 6 months, you better start really early because never happens in 6 months. You think you're going to sell your company in 6 months, that never happens too. You think you're going to get a wall built in your house, right? That doesn't take the time they say that's going to be done.
Right.
Nothing and as long as you understand, I guess you can call it Murphy's Law, that things are going to happen. Things are inevitably going to happen. And when they do happen, you become more of you know it, and you know that, okay, when I first got this paperwork about selling the company, they said it was going to be July, and we didn't sell until September.
Right.
So there's the 2 months. I knew it in my head. I actually said September.
Right.
I almost hit the date on the nose. It was probably about 2 days off.
Wow.
Yeah. The only reason I was 2 days off, I wouldn't have been on the plane going to Mexico. I was hoping that we would close before I was able to go to Mexico.
Sure. Yeah.
So I literally was 2 days off.
Right.
Yeah.
So trying to think of how to phrase it. So when you talk about, like, kind of like too many cooks in the kitchen type of thing, especially in a situation when you're dealing with partners in the business as well that are going to benefit from the sale and the acquisition in a lot of different ways and when it closes. But do you feel that at that point too, that had it not been for the experience before, that there could have been times that or other partners or other people involved could have been like, I guess this is it? Because we've talked about this on previous episodes too, about taking charge in a situation where it's scary to take charge of a situation and say, well, shit, this looks like it's not going to happen. Let's just pack up camp and, see what happens next year or something like that. You had to step in and kind of get yourself involved. How often does a situation like that happen where other people might have just been like, if they would have taken that extra step, they would have, pushed past that wall or that hurdle, can a lot of deals go through because of doing that kind of scary thing?
Yeah. Well, let me start off by saying, whether it's luck or whether it was just maybe you could say emotional intelligence and understanding my partners, I ended up with both of those partners were with me for the Sage deal and the Thrive deal. So after we sold Sage, we gathered together and said, let's start this other company. We had this idea prior to, but let's do it. I was very lucky. Great people. Three of my companies, including my biggest one, NHA, I was a sole owner. I had no partners. So 3 of 5 were all me. From building to so forth. I mean, obviously with great employees, and bringing in great people like yourself. But the last 2 were with 2 partners. They were not business guys. They were amazing. They were therapists. They were behavioral health therapists. 2 of the finest, great minds, just terrific people. And I they're going to remain close friends of mine forever. One, even though we're going in different directions, and we knew it was time. We're all going in different directions. Each of us we're in different phases in life. But I was very lucky to find the right people to be in business with. I've heard nightmares. I've been involved with, helping people go through divorces and partnerships. I've had friends. I've witnessed it. I've witnessed the worst. So I was very, very fortunate to have great partners that gave me the ability to be able to come in and lead. That's something really, such unselfish people to go, hey, you run it. You're the man. You're the CEO. You want to do it. Yes, we had disagreements. We were not kumbaya every minute.
Sure.
But when the chips were down, we backed each other. So that worked out really well. And I was nervous because I had never experienced a relationship with a partner before working. In fact, having those guys as my partners. So, it worked out really well for me. But they were very, they would say, JB, what do you think? During the Sage deal, which was back in 2020, right during the middle of COVID. We had set the price prior to going into COVID. Then going into COVID, we had these brick and mortar schools for behavioral health kids. We weren't even sure whether we were going to reopen in September, because people were staying home. We delivered the therapy and everything online. All the stuff fell together for us very well because we were prepared. We didn't even know COVID was coming, but we were so prepared for that, to be able to deliver mental health to the children from their homes, online, unsecured. We had that set up prior to, and that was just innovative thinking on my part and my partners to have that prepared. And we sailed through it. But it was very tight whether the price was going to hold for the purchase of Sage. We kept getting through the summer and worse things were happening. And in 2020, schools were closing down. They didn't know if anything was going to open in September. How we held it together and got it done, to me, was probably one of the great stories of selling the company. But we did it and we hit our number.
Yeah.
So, those are just like so many stories. I could tell you so many stories from everyone. My NHA, I've told you that story, what happened with NHA back in 2009, about how I backed out of the deal. They thought I was being very slick, and I really wasn't. It was my baby and I wanted to keep it. And they came back and offered me a higher number, and I turned that down, and they offered me another higher number, and I turned it down.
Yeah.
And then finally closed at this higher number. And, at the end of the deal, they said, "Wow, you're a genius to hold back like that." I wasn't a genius.
Yeah.
I literally was scared to sell.
Yeah.
It was a big transaction. I was literally afraid to sell that business at the time. So you live and learn.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like it requires a lot of intestinal fortitude, I guess you can say.
Intestinal meaning my stomach was in my throat.
Yeah, exactly. Just, having to just build the perseverance to and resiliency to push through, get those things done, and make sure that things happen. In other episodes, we've talked a lot about mindset, belief in yourself, belief in the business, and the story behind it, and so forth. I would have to assume that the right mindset plays a huge part in the process of a successful acquisition, the full blown, sale going through, asking a pilot, "Hey, listen, I need 5 minutes. Can you open the door?" type of thing.
Lucky the plane wasn't in the air at the time. But.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that wouldn't have been the easiest way to get out of a plane at that point.
Exactly.
But mindset, has gotten me through a lot of different things, a lot of ups and downs that I've experienced in my 44 years. Even when NHA sold, and 6 months later, at the time my daughter was 9 months old. My first daughter, Cadence, was 9 months old, and I remember getting a call from Rob, who was in my department, and he says, "Are you on your way here? They're here today." And which I thought was kind of odd. I said, "Yeah, I'm going to be there in a couple minutes." And they brought everybody into that meeting room. I know at the time you were traveling somewhere, kind of unexpecting this whole thing to happen. And they said, "We're consolidating everything back over to Kansas." And a lot of the people, a lot of the other employees and things like that throughout, kind of just sat there, not really understanding what that meant. I just remember people walking into my office, "Hey, Craig," or a lot of them would call Mr. Craig. "What's going on here? Like, what's?" And I said, I'm not really sure how to explain it to you, but I remember that day that they brought in myself and a couple of the other, higher level kind of management and things like that, and said, it's pretty much it. Like, you just gotta, this is your last day. And
they decided to move the company, which, after I'd sold it, They had me, that particular situation. I stayed on as CEO for part of the year, and that just when I had left as CEO, they made the decision to move the company from New Jersey to Kansas, unbeknownst to me. And by the way, that was, talk about bittersweet. That was probably one of the saddest situations because people did lose their jobs. I'm so lucky the last group of acquisition, sales that I've done, everything's remained and people have remained intact. But, yes, private equity or any buyer, and I don't want to put down private equity, but they have every right to make a decision. They owned it. Mm-hmm. I think their original point was to stay there, to use it as a platform. But I think they looked at the economics. The economics of it was really interesting that, hey, we could just move this New Jersey company to our corporate office in Kansas, and that'll be it. It was never discussed or anything. It was kind of interesting. They did it while I was away. As a matter of fact, I wasn't that far away. I was about 5 hours away. Yeah. I got back at the end of the day. I actually packed up and turned around and came back to the office to address what went on. What I found from the whole thing is that people were just so great. I mean, I felt so bad when that happened, by the way. I felt so bad that people had lost jobs. Some people were able to retain their jobs, but others lost their jobs. It was not, it wasn't what I dreamed of that an acquisition would end up being. Mm-hmm. I'm glad to say, all the people I know have landed on their feet and have their life ahead of them and have done some great things. But it was definitely the negative end of selling your business. I had no idea that they would make that move. Especially, it was literally like 48 hours after I had left my post as CEO. Mm. And without a word to me, which was wild. So we don't want to get into the company or whatever that was.
Sure, yeah.
But ultimately, it was not a great situation. And to this day, I've always felt bad about that. The nice thing is the business that I just sold is based in New Jersey. The accounts are in New Jersey. The business is built in New Jersey. They're building something around the New Jersey location. So I'm feeling good about that. But yeah, those are things that happen, and it's sad. We did a closing dinner. I remember at NHA at the end, and I just remember all you guys were so gracious because here I was. I felt so bad. I wanted to just cry, and all you guys gave me this like amazing gift of everybody signed this like big poster, which I still have in my house to this day. And everybody said what they thought about me. And that was really made me feel great. Mm-hmm. And that goes into, and we could talk more about this, but that goes into creating a culture, building a culture within a company that people respect each other, respect what we're doing, have this drive to want to do well in this business. And to me, that's the social purpose. Part of a social purpose is having this amazing culture with people.
Yeah. Well, I know, one of your philosophies, and I remember, when I started at NHA and you've said it to me previously, and I believe it's been mentioned on other episodes too, is that you have a belief as well where, and if I explain this wrong, then correct me, but you would rather get the best person or the best people in and kind of figure out where they fall into place as opposed to trying to find a person specifically for a position. Is that, am I explaining that right? And kind of like what started that philosophy? Was that just something that was learned, or was that something that just, came as, you gained more wisdom about the process, or did you learn that from some, other, another book or, something like that? How did that kind of?
Yeah, it was kind of based on, it was a philosophy I had. And then when I read it, it was kind of based on the Good to Great book by Jim Collins, I believe. Jim Collins, the author. Good to Great. And what was interesting about that was, the concept was get the best people on the bus, then figure out what to do with them. So get the great talent, gather talent, and then build it. There's two theories, two complementing, is that a good word? Two competing theories, actually, that are there. There's like that. There's a book called The E-Myth, which I've talked about, which Michael Gerber, and then Good to Great. They're almost like two opposite things, right? The E-Myth talked about creating systems and then getting people to run those systems. And then Good to Great talked about finding the great people and let them and figure out what to do with them and put them in. I think if you combine those two concepts, you can get a complementary process. Number one, get the great people to help you create the process, right? And then bring in people that can run the ship and do it. There are people that are really well skilled in following a process. There are others that are really, really good in creating a process, right? We all have these strengths and weaknesses. So my theory is really kind of based around both of those books. And they're not things that I learned necessarily fully from the books. I kind of learned it as I went along, but when I started seeing it in print and going, wow, that is my theory.
Right.
The Stoic wisdom thing, that came, that's all the things about, I didn't even know what Stoic wisdom was when I fell in love with The Road Less Traveled, the book about life is difficult, once you accept it, life doesn't become as difficult. And, you got to go the hard road. You got to go through the process. But literally years later, I realized that's Stoic wisdom.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I have this little band on my wrist, because my wife didn't want me to get a tattoo. So I got this made up, and it says Memento Mori. And Memento Mori is kind of a Stoic philosophy, or a Stoic quote that says, remember you shall die. There's a piece to that. Remember you will die, but live life now. Remember there's an end to this. Live it now. So, The Road Less Traveled kind of taught me that, and then understanding Stoic wisdom. So it's kind of weird, Craig, because none of these things are new. They just happen to be categorized and have a name for them.
Right.
I was living stoically my whole life, the ups, the downs, right? Being up on the top of the world doesn't last forever.
Mm-hmm.
And being a failure doesn't last forever.
Right.
I've proven both of those things. And the more you accept that, the more life is easier for you, in a weird way, right? It's a paradox.
Yeah.
So,
no, it's I heard something recently where, when you're trying to put something together, kind of think of it like a baseball field, and you have, the two foul posts are, the two different extremes. And a lot of people, a lot of businesses will sit there and I have to be on, this side, or I have to be on this side of the extreme. And they neglect the fact that there's this whole other part of the field. And if you try to aim for center field, you can start to figure out the direction of different ways to go, different ways to lean. It's things that I even talk about with my coaching, with my students, with different things when it comes to their YouTube and their content creation and so forth, is, aim in the middle first before you're trying to make this decision and so forth. And, that even kind of goes back to your belief on scaling and really understanding and having traction in the business, understanding what needs to be done, what needs, trim the fat off the things that don't work.
Yeah.
And, one of the things that you said to me at NHA, when you moved me over into the business development, area, was, I want you to run this like it's your own thing.
Yeah.
And I want you to get to the point where you kind of know all the different facets, all the different nuances throughout everything. And once you get to a certain point, then we're going to bring somebody else in, preferably from
under you. Yeah.
Right. But preferably somebody inside, you know, that you're able to look at and say, okay, this is the right person to be able to do, you know, this type of thing. But I wouldn't have been able to do that if you said, hey, look, you know, start this, you know, or take over this department more or less and start, you know, kind of running it your own way, and let's bring somebody else in to do that. I don't think I would have been able to do that had you have not said, get to the point where you're just so almost overwhelmed with the stuff that you're learning, and then figure out, okay, where do I need to place this? Do I place this person over into, you know, to left field or right field, and, you know, concentrate on those things that I was good at.
Yeah.
And the things that I knew that I had, you know, a little bit of struggles with. You know, I'm also very kind of chaotic in a lot of ways when it comes to, you know, organization and so forth. And I knew that there were people in the company, Joanne, who we brought in first. She seemed to really fit that mold and was able to, you know, to do that and handle that. But that was a philosophy that you gave me, and I still, you know, believe in. And it really made a lot of sense when I heard that the other day about the, you know, the left field, right field, you know, type of thing.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. And it makes a lot of sense, because I think a lot of people think about the extreme, you know, one extreme being, I got to scale as quickly as possible, or this, or I got to make as much money as possible. And the money obviously is important. And like you said, like, you got to have that traction. You got to be able to get those first few dollars in there before you can really start to expand.
Right.
So, you know, all these different philosophies you've learned in all your different time. But I mean, I think that when I listen back to the episodes that we've had and the conversations that we've had, just, you know, in general, it's a resounding thing that rings true, is that mindset, belief plays such a big role in really kind of any decision that you make. Business, when you're doing things right with business, or kind of in the right direction, they affect other parts of your lives as well. You know, so if something's going wrong in the business, things are kind of start to trickle off, and your life starts to suffer from it. Relationships or whatever it might be.
Sure does.
When things are going good, everything seems, you know, honky dory.
Yeah.
You know, is there a way that you found that allows you to kind of stay kind of like in the middle when things start to, you know, kind of shift and things start to ebb and flow a little bit? Is there any advice or wisdom that you could share there that, you know, just kind of keeps a person, you know, realizing that, okay, like, hey, this too shall pass, but the fact that you're aware of it, these are some things that you can do to help you stay, you know, on that path or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, trying to stay consistent through everything. You know, I mentioned to you, I lost a brother. My story goes a little deeper than that, you know. A lot of family issues, not my current family, not my wife and my daughter, but my father and my mother and my brother, and you know, trying to keep the blinders on when things are going on. I had to, because some of those things can really, really bring you down. I was just literally just emailing an entrepreneur today, who we invested in my fund, and I hadn't heard from him in a long time, and I didn't want to pry into his life, and I don't know him that well. But he had, you know, said, "Hey, sorry, I haven't gotten back to you. I've had personal problems, health problems, whatever." And I felt bad. Yeah, I don't want to pry and ask. I really didn't get any feedback on the business. I got, you know, a lot of, you know, he's going through a rough time. I just left it there for now. Don't want to pry too deep, but, you know, it's hard. It's hard to get through, you know, whether you have an illness or whether, you know, something's a major divorce or, God forbid, a tragedy. Those things are tough to kind of soldier on and move on. I've had to do that a lot. Mm-hmm. I've had to get up when my heart didn't want to be there. I had to kind of bury myself in that business. And eventually you do it enough the good times start flowing and things get back to normal. Again, it's that Stoic philosophy again, right? You got to keep trucking it out, even though nothing's, I just look at, I see a lot of early stage companies that just can't raise money, and they're getting close, but they haven't raised the money yet. And the walls are caving in, and, the bills are coming in, and how do you stay afloat? I've been there. I've been there where, like literally I laugh, like where my car was repossessed a few times, twice. I was like, I guess I'll just walk home.
Yeah.
This is back in my 20s when took me a long time to restore my credit. But I've been through those things when just shit hits the fan and sprays all over you.
Yeah.
And, getting through it takes a lot of fortitude. And, the more you push through, the more things come together. Or, it could be just a business situation, right? Lose a big account, which has happened in the past. Losing someone big and realizing, holy shit. Number one, we depended so much on this account. Those are mistakes and lessons that I've learned. Like, having a couple large accounts and losing them and losing a business.
Sure.
Or having a lot of smaller accounts, you lose a few, you don't even break a sweat.
Right.
So those are the things that you learn as you're building your business. I love businesses that are multi-diversified customer base wise. If that's, those are the ones that really excite me, because I know that, they're building the business the harder way. It's easier to get one big account, but if you're going after multiple accounts, it's a lot harder.
Yeah.
The journey is harder, but the hidden path around that journey is that you built a company that is more Teflon, has a lot less ability to fall apart. So, and you become Teflon when you're dealing with all these situations as well.
Yeah.
So getting up in the morning, putting your socks on, going to the office, and doing what you got to do, even when you feel like falling apart, happens to me still in my life. But those are things that you just got to kind of push through.
Yeah.
And it's not just about business, it's about life.
Right.
We go through the tragedies and the great things. What I learned, I guess maybe why I didn't celebrate in Mexico over the sale of the company, or when I sold NHA and a friend of mine brought champagne over the house, I didn't even open the bottle, was because I have that Stoic philosophy, that Stoic wisdom to go, and I'm going to stay at this even keel, because I'm going to stay this way when things are really great, and I'm going to stay this way when things are really down. And that's just kind of the way I like to live my life.
Stay in center field.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Stay in center field. Stay there and hang there, and don't let things get to you. I'm not telling people not to celebrate. Please do all you want.
Yeah.
Hey, if the Jets win the Super Bowl, I'm going to be celebrating. That's my only celebration. And that doesn't look like it's going to happen. But
no, not with turf at least. When you say shit hit the fan, shit hits the fan sometimes, and it gets all over you. At the same time, it when the shit does hit the fan, it hits the other people that are closest to you too. Your employees, business partners, your family, your spouse, your wife, husband, children, and all that kind of stuff. Entrepreneurs, I think, are a special breed, or even intrapreneurs are a special breed in a lot of different ways. And, pretty much everybody is kind of told to follow that's the path that everybody else should be following, not going off that hidden path and trying to find your own way and so forth. And with that, like I've noticed it in my life that the majority, 9 out of 10 people that I talk to, either related to family or friends or close friends or acquaintances, are told, take this path. This is the easier path. Go do this, go do that. And it's tough to sometimes convince a person that you're on this other path, on this hidden path, and the ups, the downs. And, like you even said, like back in the day when people would say to you like, oh, John, what are you getting yourself involved in now? And all that kind of stuff. And obviously, I'm sure now fifth sale, fifth acquisition, they're clearly singing a different tune. Have you, because I think that this is something that affects a lot of people with, not even at the point of looking for funding or even an acquisition, just a side hustle that they started that's becoming successful. And maybe that side hustle is now making more money than they are at their job and so forth. But they know that the majority of the people in their life are going to say, hey, listen, don't throw this all away because of this pipe dream that you have and so forth. How have you found it to be because it's not about convincing, it's not me trying to convince Nikki about, hey, this is, you got to follow this path with me too. She's kind of gradually moved over that way and has become.
You're talking about Nikki, your wife.
My wife. Right. Right. So, but how do you navigate that when you're dealing with situations like when you said when the shit hits the fan and, the easiest solution is just, hey, listen, just go out and just get a regular job like everybody else and this and that or whatever it might be. How have you found navigating that over your, time and with the wisdom that you've gained, that it's not convincing a person that this is it, but this is the way that I'm built. This is kind of ingrained in me and it's too difficult for me to get off this path. I've been on this path. I need to find the end.
Yeah. Well, two things I could say. When shit hits the fan and it gets on everyone, the proper thing to do is clean the shit off everybody else before you clean it off yourself.
Right.
But more importantly, you can't try to convince anybody anything when they believe something. The only way for me to have convinced anyone was the action, right? The old action speaks louder than words. The actions, that's how I judge people, right? I judge people by their actions, not by their words. I've met young people that want to be entrepreneurs, but their actions don't really say that, right? They, I think I told you, I think in the last episode I met with someone that said, I want to be a successful entrepreneur. I don't want to work. Okay, what the hell is that? That's like that doesn't work anywhere. If you don't want to work, go live on the street.
Right.
Go to the unemployment line. That's not what an entrepreneur is. And an entrepreneur is not, and I may be going off a little bit, but an entrepreneur, I just have to say this, an entrepreneur is not about the end game. An entrepreneur is about the journey, right? We always talk about that. But the real way people are going to be convinced of you is the actions that you do. Whether that's success or whether that's moving things forward, whether that's whatever, creating traction, all those things. That's, as an investor, that's what we look at. Action is traction for us, right? That's when we like a company that has some kind of traction. So those particular things can't be convinced. You can't say, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to be an entrepreneur. Watch me be an entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur. I am, you have to be able to walk the walk, talk the talk, and then you become one. And then, I had friends who I loved to death. They didn't know what the hell I was up to. They thought I was what is this guy? 1 minute he's in this business, 1 minute he's in this business. Oh, I saw you had your car last week. Now you need a ride somewhere. Right. You don't have your car anymore.
Right.
I couldn't convince anybody I wanted to be successful. I looked like I wanted to be a failure.
Right.
So I think, what does that look like now? My old friends that I was with, at the in New Jersey at the Bruce Springsteen, in the box of the Bruce Springsteen concert the other day, was, people walking up to me, and not that I asked for this, believe me, but they're like, wow, it's incredible what you've been able to do, what you've been able to create out of your life. That, to me, was retribution. They didn't even have to say that, It was only two people that said that, but they don't even have to say that. But it was nice retribution in my mind, going, "See, I told you."
Right.
But I tried to convince them who I wanted to be, what I wanted to be. They didn't get it,
right? Right.
So it's so hard to convince, and the only way you convince is by the action,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that action is, that persuades them that you are doing the right thing. But don't do it for them. You got to do it for yourself, and then all the other good stuff follows.
Right. So that becomes a byproduct, more or less, of just doing the work, being consistent. I look at things like that too, because I've had that,
sure,
those kind of reactions from people too, like, oh, what are you doing now? What are you doing now? What's this new idea or whatever it might be?
Yeah.
And I used to, especially when things didn't work out, which was more than the successes and things like that. When the successes do happen, it's great. And it's kind of not that you expect it, but just like, okay, I've made all the right decisions. I've made all the right moves. And that's why things are moving in this good direction. But where I used to think of things as being like, okay, these guys are going to, make fun of me and bust my balls about, this type of stuff. And, maybe I shouldn't say anything or whatever.
Yeah.
What I've started to realize as I've gotten a little bit older,
and wiser.
Yeah, older and wiser, and I still have a lot of wisdom to gain, and that's another reason why we do these podcasts. But I started to think of it like those failures, those things that I've tried. That was the education that you can't learn from not actually taking the action, and not actually trying to do something. Like you said, people have ideas all the time. It's actually putting those ideas and implementing on those ideas. And then from there, figuring out the best strategies to move forward and grow and get that traction, and then eventually be able to scale. But education plays a big part in it. And I know that, you've mentioned Richard Magid, who's a friend of yours, but has also, helped you out a lot. And I'm assuming that in a lot of ways, he's also coached you from, the outside, looking in and all that kind of stuff. How do you kind of feel about that, type of thing with like, entrepreneurs that are on the journey, that are maybe having a little bit of success or a little bit of trials and tribulations in their business? What do you think the benefit of bringing in like a mentor or some kind of a coach, how does that play in, in your life, in the belief that you have on that? Because I am a coach, so I might be a little bit biased in that sense, but I feel that there are certain things that a person can learn and educate themselves on. And then there's the coaching that happens after that. It's why some of the top athletes in the world are still coached, and a lot of people will be like, well, why are you a coach? Why aren't you doing this yourself? And it's just because these are the things that I've experienced, these are the things that I know and I've learned, and I can share and articulate them in a way that you can understand from the education and knowledge that you have. But this is how you're able to do it better. This is based off of experience and things like that. How important is that kind of stuff to you?
So I'll answer your coach thing in a minute, but I'm also, one thing struck me while you were talking about this is, it's not how you handle yourself during success. It's how you handle yourself during failure or during tough times. And like those feelings of feeling like when your friends or relatives or anyone says, what are you doing now? And you get this feeling, it's how you kind of let that slide, right? The easier you let that go, the more you grow, the more you grow as a person. You're not bitching about, they feel I'm a loser. They think because I'm jumping from this to this to this. So it's how you handle yourself during the bad times is what makes the good, right? So it's not like, to me, like I've been through so much shit, and you have too, that success doesn't change me. It only makes me think back at the old times that were shit.
Yeah.
Right? And going, I'm glad I'm not there now. But you know, and going down the next hidden path, you know, I can have my failure next, whatever. So it really is how you handle yourself. Now, to go into the coaching thing, absolutely. I mean, for me, it was a winner. I was really a lonely entrepreneur. My wife was so supportive, but she couldn't tell me what I needed to hear. You know, she probably looked through it more with jaded, you know, glasses going, great job, John. I'm behind you. Or then sometimes she'd go like, what the hell are you doing? Maybe you should go get a job.
Yeah.
Right. And so I get this, I used to think my wife was schizophrenic for a while. I'd go, I'd come home and she's like, maybe you should just go find something and go to work. And then another time she'd be like, I'm all behind you. I'm like, do I have two different wives here? What's going on? And I, you know, we love our wives dearly, but they're not, they're so in the middle of all this. It's hard for them to even make decisions.
Yeah.
And people on the outside. So finding a coach, for lack of a better word, you know, a mentor, someone to be able to walk you through the process, someone to pat you on the back when you need it, someone to actually push you when you don't need it.
Right.
One of my first companies, one of the first companies, second company I sold was really a push by one of my coaches to say, you got to get out of this business because you have this other business that's lighting it up, but this one's holding you back. And if you sell this business, you'll make some dollars to be able to support this business. So there were some decisions that were made through having someone like Richard, who we talked about. We use his name a lot because total respect for the guy. He's been a friend, you know, and a support, and you know, and he wrote a book, and you know, he said some really great things about me. I didn't realize how much I taught him as well, but we taught each other. But I think it's so important. I mean, I think CEOs should have people that they can bounce things off of. You don't necessarily have to be an entrepreneur, but someone that's leading people should have someone that they can talk to. I would be surprised if I don't see, you know, an NFL football coach have, whether it's a mental health professional or a you know, someone who's been through the grind with them, helping them kind of navigate their decisions in life. And forget just about business. It's everything. Everything is related.
Yeah.
I mean, I went through therapy because I wanted to be a better person. If I could be a better person, I could be a better leader. If I could be a better leader, then things will turn out better. So therapy for me has always been, and many years of therapy, I've learned so much about myself. I've learned the good, the bad, the ugly. And those, so I absolutely think anyone, find a mentor, find someone that can help you direct the path. Don't get so emotional with these coaches. You know, in therapy, it was funny. I was talking with someone about therapy, and they said, you know, I have this problem with my family, and you know, they drive me crazy. But as soon as my therapist mentions it, I get mad at the therapist for talking about my family. They're my family.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I stopped them for a minute and go, isn't that kind of interesting? Like, they're telling you something that you already know, but you don't want to hear it from somebody else.
Yeah.
It's you can hate those people, but they can't hate those people.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
So open yourself up. The reason I said that is because I think you need to open yourself up to criticism about things and about beliefs and about all that stuff. So it's therapeutic, it's coaching, mentoring, it's guiding, it's whatever. I totally believe in it. Got to find the right people to do it.
Sure.
Right. You could, you know, you don't want a hack telling you how to live your life. You don't want someone right? You don't want somebody to tell you about traveling the world if they've never traveled the world.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
So, you're not going to sit there and go, tell me about Italy, and they've never been to Italy.
Yeah.
So you got to find the right people. They're not easy to come by.
Mm-hmm.
That's a whole nother thing. We could talk about that at some point, about kind of figuring out who that right person should be and could be.
Yeah. Sure. No, I think that would be a great future episode for sure, because I think that is such an important thing to have. And I think it's not only about finding that right person, it's also finding that right person that resonates with your beliefs as well, or that can challenge your beliefs to become a better version of the beliefs that you currently have.
Yeah.
And add things to that. I want to end the episode because we're pretty much getting down to the wire now. I want to end the episode with one last question. What is the number one thing that you can say to yourself, if you had to pin it down? And I don't know if you'll be able to answer this right away. What's the biggest thing that makes the journey so exciting and wants to keep you going? Now that you're, like you said, you're 60 and you're not done yet.
I think okay, let me think of that for a second. Give me 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2. I think it's living life to the fullest. I think that keeps me going. Going into business isn't just about business for me. It's about life. It's about excitement. It's about, meeting people, knowing people. I revel in, working with people. I revel in, working with vendors. I revel working with customers. So and having relationships. So that's what keeps me going in business. If business was just a struggle, if it was like I have to get up every morning with my lunch pail and, go to the rock quarry and chop rocks, I don't think I'd do it. Maybe it'd keep me in shape, but maybe I can use that as an example. But I think it's the love of life. Too many people don't, look at life as a an issue or an arbitrage that they have to go through every day. That this struggle. I'm starting to learn as I'm getting older. This doesn't always, believe me, I wasn't always like this. But as I'm getting older, life is pretty damn cool if you do it. I mean, and there's days that I'm relaxed. I'm not doing anything. I'm watching the NFL football with my friends. I'm having drinks. All those things fit together. So work to me is play to me it all it's all together. It's one thing. So that's what keeps me going. It's not like, retirement. What is retirement? I went to Mexico. I sat on the beach for a couple, for a week. I was in California for a week, relaxed. I did those nice things. It was beautiful. It was relaxing. Can I do that every day? No, I need some stimulation. I had to read every day to keep myself stimulated.
Sure.
But ultimately, they all go together. So if for me to keep me going, I think it's all the above, enjoying life, all this stuff, and working. But I take it in a different. I look at a job a different way.
And I would think also that also goes to the point of having a purpose for what you're doing. If you you feel that you're behind a purpose, that you're doing something that is going to make a difference in not only your life and your family's life with having a successful business, but also letting other people that are involved in that business, either the clients or the employees, have that kind of fulfillment.
You're absolutely right. And that's the word I left out by accident, but you thank you for catching that and throwing it back at me. Yeah. Purpose, you need to have purpose in life, and no matter what that is.
Right.
That could be, one of the purposes of my life right now is helping my daughter with her business.
All right.
I enjoy that. I enjoy having these conversations with her, about her business, because that makes me feel like I'm supportive to her, and I do have a purpose.
Right.
So,
right. Awesome.
All these, yeah,
Very
all the
cool.
above.
Well, Jon, again, I appreciate the time, the information that you shared here. I definitely think it is worth exploring more about, finding those right people to, help you along that path. Path is something that, hopefully the people that are listening to this are starting to say, okay, maybe I should start to follow this. And I think the coach or the mentor or the wise advisors, those are the people that are standing in front of you on that path. Those are the ones that you can tap on the shoulder and say, hey, what's that thing over there? What do I need to be afraid of that thing? And that's where, those people play a big part, and finding the right people to be able to do that is very important. So I think it's a good idea to talk about in a future episode. But for this one, we're going to wrap up with that final comment that you left. And thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. And we will see you on the next episode. Take care.
Thanks, guys.